Good morning. This is Julie Walsh, and welcome again coming back today. We're excited. I'm going to jump just in comment-wise to give you a heads up. So while you're all fresh and alert and have your coffee, when you are studying for your test for the Navigator or for the CAC exam, I want you to go to oci.wi.gov, and that will get you to the OCI homepage. And if you click in a search term for Navigators, it will pull up a whole web page that will have tons of information for you, including what's called the Intermediary's Guide to Insurance, the Wisconsin's Intermediary Guide. You need to focus on chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 only. So it's a big guide, but just look at the first 4 chapters, and then also look through the Navigator frequently asked questions or the CAC frequently asked questions and the answers. If you look through those and study those pieces along with what we've been presenting to you, you'll be in great shape. So I wanted to flag right off the bat that if you go to our home website and go do a search term for Navigators, you're going to get to an entire page, and I'll show you at the end of today what that looks like. But you're focusing on chapters 1 through 4 of the Intermediary's Guide, plus the FAQs for both the Navigators and the CACs, and that will put you in great position for the test. So Adam, if you want to go to the next slide. So for those of you who may or may not have been with us yesterday, I want to highlight some of the mission statement for OCI, which is the mission of the Office of the Commissioner for Insurance is leading the way in informing and protecting the public and responding to the insurance needs. So our goal is really to be, our strategies and our goals are formulated in order to support consumers, keep a balanced marketplace and a healthy marketplace with our insurers, and to be responsive to legislative needs and consumer needs. Next slide. How we do that is through a structure of statutes and rules. So the Wisconsin insurance statutes typically, for the most part, are going to be in chapters 600 through 655, and we are in the INS, or Insurance Administrative Code. The commissioner has broad authority to regulate the insurance industry, balancing consumers' needs, insurers, and legislative requirements. The legislative note to the introductory section of the insurance statutes state, insurance is an area of free contractual activity, except as restricted by the insurance code. This freedom to contract allows a free marketplace and the responsibility of OCI to monitor that marketplace to maintain a level playing field. Health insurance is probably one of the most complicated lines that you are getting into, and it is one that we watch and regulate very carefully at OCI. In this presentation, we're going to highlight key provisions within the statutes. Later this morning, we're also going to just briefly highlight some mandates, but also focus on how you walk through making a decision about what healthcare is right for you. Next slide, please. So with these powers and duties, and truly the commissioner was granted very broad powers 150 years ago, so we are a long-standing agency. We are charged to protect the public, to ensure the insurance industry meets the needs responsibly, adequately, and even-handedly. So when I draft administrative rules, one of my catch-all phrases is, I know I have done a good rule when everyone is equally unhappy with me, because I have balanced the needs of what the legislature's intent was, the interests of the insurers, the interests and needs of the consumers, and any other parties that are at play in the mix who all have a voice at the table. And if I've drafted a rule that everyone can live with, but nobody walked away with getting everything they wanted, then I have balanced those needs. Next slide, please. So the commissioner has the responsibility to administer and enforce the insurance chapters and all powers specially granted within the statutes to enable the commissioner to perform his duties as commissioner. That includes taking enforcement actions against agents or companies or other licensees within the office, to issue orders. We can issue remedial orders. We can issue orders to just say stop, cease and desist. We can issue orders to say fix what's going on and we want to see improvement. We require licensees to respond to our inquiries and provide reports when we ask. We have very broad powers with this so that we get to see what's going on. They can't say, no, they have to provide it. So that having that ability with Eric's team to be able to say, no, I want to see all the marketing materials that go with that policy so we understand how it's being presented out to the consumers. That's hugely helpful when we're evaluating whether or not there's an issue in the marketplace. We have the power to examine all the licensees. So we can look at agent records as well as companies' full financial history, all their transactions. So we can do deep dive, and we do a deep dive on the companies to make sure that they are solvent, that all companies are playing by the same deck of rules so that it's fair to the consumers, it's fair to the insurers, which makes Wisconsin a very healthy marketplace. Next slide, please. As I said, we have enforcement powers. However, it's also done in a fair manner. There are hearings that are held through, so as a state agency, we have administrative hearings. They're conducted through an administrative process. There is a neutral judge who hears the facts and the evidence and renders a preliminary decision. The final decision on insurance matters is held by the commissioner. The commissioner is the ultimate judge. However, there are appeal rights through the circuit court and beyond. We can issue sanctions. So we can issue an order to comply. We can issue forfeitures, which are monetary penalties. We can issue restitution. So if somebody took money inappropriately or needs to have a policy unwound, we can do that and get money back to the consumers. We can also levy penalties that if you took advantage of a person and made money by doing that, we can not only take away the money that you made from those illegal actions, but twice that amount, so that there is strong carrots and sticks to try to keep everyone on the same playing field so that consumers are treated respectfully, agents are given the respect that they deserve with their knowledge base, which is why we want you to be trustworthy and competent, and that consumers get made whole. And I'm going to pass this now to Eric for the next slide, Adam.
Thanks, Julie. The next slide here within the deck is licensing authority. So one section within OCI's Division of Market Regulation and Enforcement is agent licensing. They handle the licensing of agents, managing general agents, navigators, and employee benefit plan administrators. Employee benefit plan administrators are similar to third-party administrators. OCI regulates the conduct of licensees, including marketing practices and compensation. Compensation is not set by OCI, but certain products do have limitations to not incentivize selling, particularly in relation to the senior market to protect seniors. OCI's Division of Financial Regulation monitors the financial solvency of insurers, licensed HMOs, Medicaid HMOs, CMOs, and EBPAs. You can see the list there with the bullet points on licensing authority. Next slide, please. Key navigator and assister information. Navigators are licensed by OCI. CACs, which are certified application counselors, are not licensed by OCI. Requirements for both are listed on this slide. Certified application counselors are required to meet the training and examination requirements established for navigators, including the 16 hours of pre-licensing training, and must successfully pass the written examination. This is in addition to any federal training requirements established at 45 CFR 155.225. And you can see there that there's requirements regarding fingerprints as well. And also with regard to CCIO, CCIO has a website with federal training information and other resources, and that stands for Consumer Information and Insurance Oversight. You can see the website there. Next slide, please. Navigator licensing requirements. You must be 18 years of age. You must be a resident of Wisconsin. You must complete pre-licensing training. You must have fingerprinting and a background check. You must pass a written examination. You need to be affiliated with a Navigator entity. And you also must complete the federal training requirements. So these are straightforward as base requirements. The training ensures a uniform base knowledge for those that are assisting consumers. You can find the definition of Navigator within Wisconsin State Statute 628.90. A Navigator can be an individual or an entity that supervises or employs an individual who either performs any activities and duties related to the Navigator program on behalf of the Federal Exchange and who receives funding to perform such functions on behalf of the Federal Exchange. An individual Navigator does not include a person acting as an insurance intermediary. Moving on to the next slide, we do have a polling slide here, and the polling slide question is, which of the following is not a Navigator licensing requirement? A, to be fingerprinted and receive a background check. B, to be appointed with an insurance company. C, to be a resident of the state of Wisconsin. And D, to be affiliated with a Navigator entity. I'll give you a minute to answer that. Okay. It does look like most people came back with the answer B, which is correct. The correct answer is to be appointed with an insurance company. So that's good that most people had the correct answer. Moving on to the next slide, which is slide 11, licensed agents as navigators. So currently licensed insurance agents with accident and health lines of authority may apply to work as a navigator. However, they must comply with the following. They must complete the Wisconsin and federal training. They must submit a Navigator application to OCI. They must be affiliated with an entity that received federal Navigator grant funds. Licensed agents cannot have active appointments with health insurers, and licensed agents cannot receive commission from the health insurance company. Next slide. Initial application requirements for navigators. Initial application requirements for navigators include completing 16 hours of accident and health pre-licensing. The courses are available on the OCI website. Complete any federally mandated training required under the Federal Health Care Exchange. Schedule and pass a Navigator exam through the PSI website, and you can see the address there. Exam fee is $75. You also must submit fingerprinting through FieldPrint Wisconsin, and finally submit an individual Navigator application. Next slide.
Eric, real quick, there's a question that came up, and I want to raise it before we get too far. What happens if somebody wants to become a navigator or agent? They reside in, say, Illinois or Minnesota, but they're employed in Wisconsin?
Yeah, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the requirement is Wisconsin residency. So I believe it would preclude it. Do you have a different opinion on that?
Yes.
Okay.
So if the primary location of business is actually located in Wisconsin, and that happens a lot in borders communities, so the Navigator entity that's sponsoring the CAC is in Wisconsin, then the CAC who is attached to that Navigator entity can be licensed or certified here in Wisconsin. So it's the residency is required for navigators. For assisters, they need to have the primary location in Wisconsin.
Great, thanks so much. I just know, yeah, that comes up a lot in the border counties. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Julie. So with that caveat, there is the exception to the residency requirement. Okay, moving on here to Navigator license. So for Navigator licenses, the fee is $35 per year. The license is permanent. The Navigator must pay the renewal fee each year, and the Navigator must complete 8 credits of continuing education each year. The license is revoked if there's a failure to pay fees or a failure to complete the continuing education. If revoked, the licensee or former licensee can reapply by paying a reinstatement fee or completing continuing education. So please note that if a license is revoked for failing to pay fees or for not completing continuing education, that there is the ability to regain that license. Next slide. Next slide is initial application requirements for assisters. And so the registration requirements for CACs, you must complete a 16-hour pre-licensing training requirement, which can be in accident and health or Navigator specific training. Courses that are available on the OCI website. CACs should retain a copy of the documentation demonstrating successful completion of the pre-licensing requirement for their own records. Complete any federally mandated training required under the Federal Healthcare Exchange for CACs. You must schedule and pass a Navigator exam through the PSI website. The exam fee again is $75. Provide evidence of certification within the organization designated by the Federal Exchange as a CAC organization. The organization CAC is affiliated with, the organization that the CAC is affiliated with will notify OCI with your name, and the certified application counselors must also be registered with OCI by contacting the website listed there at wisconsin.gov. So in review, a certified application counselor is a non-Navigator assister who has been designated by or working on behalf of the Federal Exchange. And also, certified application counselors are required to meet the training and examination requirements established for Navigators, including the 16 hours of pre-licensing training and also successful passage of the written examination. This is in addition, again, to any federal training requirements established at 45 CFR 155.255, excuse me, 155.225. Next slide. Certified application counselors. Certified application counselors must complete their pre-licensing training, pass the Navigator examination, complete 8 credits of continuing education training through the year, complete federal training, be affiliated with or supervised by a registered non-Navigator assister entity. This entity is responsible to register the individual CAC with OCI. CACs do not receive a license or a certificate from OCI. So although there's similar base knowledge requirements, certified application counselors are held to a different standard than Navigators, but they're still expected to be neutral and informed. And again, individuals who want to become certified application counselors do not need to be licensed. Entities employing one or more non-Navigator assisters are required to provide the commissioner with a list of all certified application counselors that it employs, supervises, or is affiliated with once the individuals are authorized by the Federal Exchange to provide assistance. Entities employing, supervising, or affiliated with certified application counselors assume the legal responsibility for the acts of the certified application counselors. Next slide, please. So you can see on that next slide, Navigator and CAC permitted practices. So besides it being permissible to facilitate enrollment into a qualified health plan on the federal marketplace, Navigators may also refer consumers to insurers or licensed agents if consumers are interested in products off the federal exchange. These will be without advanced premium tax credit or assistance, but may be more affordable for persons who are not income eligible for the perks on the marketplace. The following are permitted activities. Navigators and CACs may conduct public education activities to raise awareness of available qualified health plans within the federal exchange. They may distribute fair and impartial information concerning enrollment in a QHP through the federal exchange and the availability of premium tax credits and cost sharing reductions that may be available. They may explain that consumers may purchase health plans through the federal exchange or off the exchange. They may make consumers aware that plans are available in the outside market and that they may want to talk with a licensed health insurance agent about health insurance options. They may also facilitate enrollment in a qualified health plan through the federal exchange. They may outline information that a consumer will need to have available when applying for coverage through the federal exchange. They may also provide information that will allow the consumer to access the federal exchange either at their home or at a computer terminal that's provided by the Navigator. They're allowed to explain to the consumer the following information: the potential eligibility for public government programs, how the federal health insurance premium tax credit and cost sharing reductions work, and if there's any risk associated for the use of the federal health insurance premium tax credit as well. They may describe features and benefits of health coverage in general terms, including cost sharing mechanisms like deductibles, co-pays, or co-insurance, and how these work or affect the consumer. They're also allowed to describe what a summary of benefits document is and where to locate a summary of benefits, and also relevant cost sharing provisions within the information from the qualified health plans. They're also allowed to explain how to find information about provider networks. They may describe the different metal tiers, the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum tiers, and how the benefits may change at different metal tiers based upon the consumer's income. It can provide information in a manner that is culturally and linguistically appropriate to the needs of the population being served by the federal exchange. And finally, they may provide a referral for an individual to an appropriate state or federal agency who has a grievance, a complaint, or a question regarding their health plan, their coverage, or a determination under such plan or coverage. Moving on to the next slide. Here we have Navigator prohibited practices. So again, Navigators are required to be neutral providers of information, a resource in a complex field. Neutrality is the key here. The hope is to guide or navigate health insurance terms, networks, costs, and guide a consumer so that they are able to make informed decisions on health insurance while still balancing affordability and tolerance of risk. So prohibited activities, these are things Navigators cannot do. They cannot receive compensation from an insurer, stop-loss insurance, or third-party administrator. They cannot receive compensation that is dependent upon whether an individual enrolls in or renews coverage in a health benefit plan. They may not provide any information related to enrollment or other insurance products not offered in the federal exchange. They may not make false or misleading statements. They may not provide advice comparing health benefit plans that may be better or worse for the consumer or the employer. They're also not allowed to recommend a particular health benefit plan or insurer or advise consumers or employers regarding a particular insurer or health benefit plan selection. They're not allowed to engage in any fraudulent, deceptive, or dishonest acts or unfair methods of competition. And they're also not allowed to receive consideration directly or indirectly from any health insurance issuer in connection with the enrollment of individuals or employees into a qualified health plan. Any individual or entity acting in violation of the law provisions may be subject to an administrative action, including restitution and limitation or revocation of licensure or registration. Next slide. Here you see the percentage breakdown of items that will be tested on the Navigator exam. So this will give you an indication of perhaps where to concentrate your time and give you an idea of what the percentage breakdowns are to focus on. Okay, and moving on, we have Navigator and CAC potential questions. For the examination, you register online or by telephone. And again, the fee is $75. And when you go to the examination, you must bring your pre-licensing course certificate. And OCI agent licensing questions, you can see the details there. If you have any, please feel free to call or email OCI agent licensing if you have any questions on this slide or on the process in general. And with that, I will pass back to Julie for the next slide.
And this question for either of you, just because it happens to pertain directly to this slide, do CACs need to complete the federal training prior to taking the examination?
My understanding is yes.
That was my understanding as well. I've seen it. I've seen people get around it, but I don't think that should have happened. That was definitely on the old examination entity. So yes is the answer to that question.
And for a particular reason, a lot of the federal training goes through privacy and security of information they're going to be receiving. And that's the main place you're going to get that information. So it's really critical that you have that federal training because you're really working in conjunction with the federal government when you're enrolling people onto the marketplace. So I wouldn't do it without having had a background because of the unique information you're going to get through that training.
Exactly. Yeah. There are a number of questions that will be much easier with that background or harder without it. So and then
if we're good, let's go to the next slide, please.
There's one other question. If there's a deadline on taking the examination.
So as you know what's coming up, the 2021 open enrollment timeframe is going to be November 1st through December 15th. Open enrollment is the annual time during which consumers can purchase individual health insurance plans either on or off the federal exchange. If you purchase your on-exchange product by December 15th and pay, your policy is going to be effective on January 1, 2021. Outside this window is very limited opportunities to actually get onto the exchange. A person generally can only enroll outside of this window if they have a special enrollment period. It is critical to remember that people should really go back in, even if you've been on the exchange before and you just want to renew your coverage, it's important to go back into the exchange, make sure that all the information for you and your family members is current. Is your income still accurate? Is where you live still accurate? And make sure that the products that you're looking at are still the ones that you want. Insurers do make modifications to networks or plan designs. They add maybe different types of products. They may have more than one silver product. You need to go through and make sure that you are affirmatively selecting what is best for you each year. And so it's a good habit to get into rather than just letting things roll over. Even if that's ending up what you do, it's really important to go back in and make sure everything is accurate, because if something is wrong and you're using, let's say, advanced premium tax credits and your income level isn't accurate, you could be in a position that you may have to pay back some of those taxes. So it is best practice to go back into your account every year and make affirmative choices. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the only other time that you can get onto the marketplace or get into insurance is outside of that window of November 1 to December 15th, is a special enrollment period, or an SEP. These are available for individuals to enroll outside that open enrollment window. And there are limited reasons why you can get one of these options. One is a loss of coverage through a loss of employment or due to a divorce or legal separation. A change of residence. You've moved out of your county, you've moved out of your state. You are no longer eligible for Medicaid. You have newly obtained citizenship. Or you've had a life event, a birth, marriage, adoption, or a child placed in foster care. There are windows for each of these events, and it is, you have 60 days to get that enrollment for the SEPs. If you have a birth or an adoption, you have typically 30 days to notify your carrier. Remember that if you are on a federal plan, not only do you need to let your carrier know, but you need to go in and update your information on your account with the marketplace to be sure that that child gets reported there as well. And we have another polling slide. It's on your screen. It's not something that I think is popping up for you. And so people are using the chat to respond. And this question is, a special enrollment period are available for individuals when A, they are no longer eligible for Medicaid, B, they receive a promotion at work, C, find an insurance plan that they like better, D, want to change their primary care doctor. Yay, yes, and it looks like the poll did pop up. So if you can look on your side panel of the presentation, there's a pull down for polling, and it has the question presented for you as well as the ability to hit radio buttons. Okay, and I think when I was seeing some scrolling, I think you did select correctly that 89% of you got it right. You can have an open enrollment or a special enrollment period when you are no longer eligible for Medicaid. Although you might like and think that you would be great to get a different plan, or you want to change your doctor, or you get a promotion at work, those are not qualified events to get a special enrollment opportunity. Next slide, please. So Wisconsin has a very competitive marketplace on the federal exchange. We are very fortunate for that. Many states have one or two carriers only for their entire state. In 2020, there were 15 different insurers offering plans throughout the state of Wisconsin. And preliminary, it looks like 24 insurers are coming on the exchange for 2021. The exchange issuers must offer their plans off the exchange as well as on the exchange. And those same insurers who are offering the plans have to make it available in the individual off-exchange market. Typically, if the product offered off-exchange may have a slightly different cost potentially, or it might have some different features. So depending on if you're eligible for any advanced premium tax credits or any cost sharing reductions, if you fall in that category that you don't qualify for those, sometimes it is helpful to look off the exchange, although if the exchange is truly a good place to start shopping and understanding what is out there and what the costs are. And a good tool, again, our website is going to be one of your best friends. At oci.wi.gov, we actually populate a map that you can click on a county by county basis, and it will tell you what insurers are offering in that county, what types of plans they're offering in that county, anything from catastrophic to platinum, and maybe they have multiple plans. And it may be, so when you're looking at an insurer that may have 5 different silver plans, you need to understand what's the difference among those 5 plans. So it takes some research, it takes some time to get familiar with those plans. But our map helps you at least know, maybe in a county we only have 2 insurers. I don't believe we have any counties in the state of Wisconsin that just has 1. We're very fortunate with that. But if you go to our website and you put in the website that's now on your screen, you will actually be able to find where the insurers are when you're assisting consumers. Next slide. So if you remember from yesterday, or if you're new today, the business of insurance is actually a legal contract. So when we talk about policies that are sold, it's actually a contract between the consumer and the insurer. So the laws of contracts apply to that policy. You have to provide, so if you remember kind of the main pieces of what constitutes a contract is an offer. So the insurer is offering a product. Acceptance, you're accepting what you're seeing, you're choosing and making that choice, and you have to make compensation. You're going to pay them premium in exchange for their offering. Notice to an agent is notice to the insurer. So when an insurance agent is representing a company and making representations about their products, if a consumer says something to the agent, that is notice to the insurer as though the insurer heard it directly. An insurer is bound by the acts of the agents within the scope of the agent's apparent authority. Their representations, either oral or written, the insurer is bound by those. There are also contracts dealing with privacy protections. The information you're going to be receiving when you work with consumers is a lot of personal financial and personal health information that must be protected. Insurance agents are under HIPAA arrangements and security and safety provisions that are in place for that, so that person's personally identifiable information does not get breached. And it just takes 2 independent pieces of individual information to create a false identity. So at the office, we're very careful about maintaining privacy and safety of that information when we receive it and on responding to open records. But it's also your job too. And again, this goes back to, we want people who are helping these people to be competent and trustworthy, because they are getting really private information and very critical information to those people. And at all times, consumers have the right to file a complaint with the office. That cannot be limited. It cannot be threatened to be removed. An insurer or an agent can't threaten or try to dissuade you from filing a complaint. And it's our best way to get a feel for what's going on in the marketplace. We're based in Madison and we have a great team, but we are not in every part of the state at all times. And you guys are going to be on the front line hearing lots of things that consumers are experiencing. So if you're concerned, talk with your entity that you're working with, or encourage filing a complaint with us. It doesn't hurt, and it often helps us understand how our insurers are behaving or how our licensed agents are behaving, or navigators. We hope to have policies be readable, but they're still very complex documents because ultimately they're really a contract. Next slide, please. So as with many contracts, there are certain provisions that must be laid out in these contracts. Notice of a claim. If you have a claim and you need to actually file it because where you've received care doesn't have an automated process to forward that claim, that's your responsibility. You have to let your carrier know that you have a claim. On the flip side, if they receive that claim, they have a duty to promptly settle those claims when they have sufficient information. So an insurer must promptly pay most insurance claims. A covered claim is not overdue if it's not paid within 30 days, if they did not receive sufficient information. If they have complete or even partial information enough to make that determination, then they have 30 days to try to settle that claim. What's an effective and a mistake in an insurance contract? Well, in this term, we're using the legal term. So it's the illegal effect of a mistake in an insurance contract. In most circumstances, unless otherwise provided, general contract law applies to mistakes in insurance contracts. So in property insurance, a mistake designating the person that the insurance is payable to does not void the policy, it's a mistake. But it does create a defense for the insurance company because they may not be able to pay that person that was identified erroneously. Unfair claim settlement practices are failing to, we want generally good business practices, right? So we want to avoid unfair marketing practices that would include failing to acknowledge pertinent communications between, with respect to a claim arising during an insurance policy. We want prompt response and obtaining necessary claim forms, instructions, with reasonable assistance given to insureds and claimants. We want good faith effort to effectuate a fair and equitable settlement of claims in which liability is reasonably clear. So if an insurer is, knows that you went to a plan provider, it was clearly a covered benefit, they can't just put up delays to not pay it. They have to, there's a reasonable certainty they're going to need to pay it. They can ask for clarity on a bill. Maybe there's some duplication in the bills that they saw. So that's fair, but they can't just hold it up when it's clearly something that they're reasonably responsible for paying. And they can't knowingly misrepresent pertinent facts or policy information. Consumers, each line of insurance has provisions based on the line for some period of time for a consumer to return the policy without penalty. During the open enrollment period, you can change your mind between November 1 and December 15th if you realize that maybe you just got notice of a new job, or you got notice of maybe your job not being in around, and you want to change what you want. If you go back into the marketplace, go back into your account, you can make changes. After December 15th, that flexibility, because you found a different provider or your provider moved or something, that goes away unless there's an SEP. You have the right to return is going to be noticed on the front of your policy, and it's going to say 10 days. It's going to say up to maybe 30 days if it's a year contract policy. But you need to look at that and pay attention. So when you get mail, be sure you're opening it from an insurance company, especially one that you are anticipating having your information, because they're going to be giving you vital information. Grace periods are the time window to give you time to pay. So premium is usually due on the 1st of the month, but an insurer is not going to stop paying claims or processing claims until you have passed your grace period. And there are different grace periods off the exchange than on the exchange. And on the exchange, there are different grace periods depending on whether or not you're receiving advanced premium tax credits. If you are receiving advanced premium tax credits on the exchange, you have a 90-day window. Claims from the insurer are going to start getting pended after 30 days of non-payment. In order for those claims to get paid, you're going to have to be sure you make all premium payments so that you're up to speed with that policy. But your policy will not get termed during those 90 days. Under this COVID emergency, and I believe next week you'll be hearing more, there's some additional flexibility from the feds on that window. Off the exchange on a health product, you really only have 31 days grace period. If you fail to pay, then the insurer can terminate that policy. And the last item on here is grievances. These are rights that consumers have, and you can complain and grieve about anything. It's a written and it doesn't have to be in a specific form, but it is expressed in writing to the insurer by or on behalf of an insured, and it can be regarding any part of their interaction with the insurer, the provision of services, determinations of whether or not a policy should be rescinded or a decision by the company, determinations of a level of service of care that needs to be given. So like autism, is it appropriate? Was the service that's being recommended evidence-based or not? And claims practices. So you can grieve if you wanted to. The newspapers in the waiting room are too old and the stripes in the parking lot are going the wrong direction. OCI and the insurer are still going to look at that. We're going to take that under advisement. We're going to see what happened, but we're also going to be just as concerned if you can't get in to see a provider. Insurers that issue health benefit plans also have to give you another step, which is this independent review. Health benefit plans, these are so off the marketplace, and for certain types of plans, you're still under Wisconsin independent review laws. On the marketplace and for qualified health plans, you're following the federal process of independent review. This is a process where an outside expert provides a second look at the claim. The reviewer is not affiliated with the insured, the medical provider, or the insurer, and conducts an independent, unbiased review of the claim. The independent review process is intended to be an easy way to receive an independent decision within a relatively short period of time. An independent review may be requested whenever a health plan denies coverage for a treatment-based or on a medical judgment. The dispute must involve this judgment. So they're saying, you know, we're not going to cover ABC health condition, although you think in the policy terms that's supposed to be a covered benefit. The insured can request an independent review either on a standard time frame or an expedited time frame. So let's say you have an emergent surgery and your insurance is saying, no, we're not going to cover that. You can ask for that to be done on an expedited basis, and they have to turn those around as expeditiously as possible, but usually within 24 to 48 hours. So those options are available for you. The next slide. So health insurance is one of the more complicated lines of insurance that we deal with. And ultimately, what a consumer is balancing when they are making a decision to purchase health insurance is balancing the principles of risk and risk tolerance. So when you have to look at your bundle of your finances, the needs that you think you're going to be expecting, and how you want insurance to interplay with you. And I'll use me as an example. I have a very low tolerance for risk, which means I am willing to pay for more actions by the insurer at an earlier point in time. That will cost me money. So as soon as, which is now the balance. So I have to balance the fact that I don't like to tolerate risk against how much money I can afford to pay, not just in the monthly premium, but in all aspects of the cost sharing that come with a health insurance product. So can I afford the base premium plus the deductible, plus the maximum out of pocket, plus any cost sharing like co-insurance or co-payments? Then I can make my best decision on where I fall on a continuum of balancing my tolerance for risk against what I can afford to pay in insurance. One pays an insurance company to take the risk. That's why you're paying a premium. You're saying, I'm willing to pay this set amount of premium for you, insurance company, to assume the risk at our agreed terms. So in the terms, again, this is a contract. So what is that deductible amount? What is that maximum out-of-pocket amount? What co-pays and co-insurances? Which is why insurance companies may have 5 different silver level model plans, because they may be changing some component of that cost sharing. This is where truly you're being able to help consumers make best decisions for them is coming into play, because they need to consider not just the premium. That's just one piece of the financial bubble that comes with insurance. And there's a reason individual health insurance tends to feel like it's a lot more expensive. And it's because it's an insurer taking on just your risk. It doesn't get to be split among other people because you have an individual insurance policy. Unlike an employer or a group insurance plan, which they are taking the cumulative risks of all the people in that group and applying that risk and spreading that risk, which is based on the concept of the laws of large numbers. So the larger the group you get to spread the risk, actually the lower the risk it is for the insurer to take on. So the cost that they're charging for the premium will decrease. In addition to these contract pieces, you need to be aware for health insurance, some of the unique features like networks. What kind of product is this? Is this an HMO, a closed panel, or an open panel? Is this a point of service where you can go anywhere for healthcare? Is this a skinny plan or an exclusive provider network? You can only see very finite providers, and there's no coverage outside of those providers. You need to look at the cost sharing, and either through both the premium and the maximum out of pocket. You need to look at deductibles and co-pays and co-insurance. You need to look at what they're covering and what they're not covering, as well as if they have any limitations or exclusions. That all comes together into one piece of what you're selecting. So our next slide is the break. So we have just a minute or two if you want, if there's a question, and then Eric and I will be back.
There are a couple questions. Can you guys hear me right now? Julie, Eric, can you hear me? Were you able to unplug? Can you hear me, Julie, now?
Yep.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay, cool. I was just waiting for you to unplug that. There's a few questions, mostly related to timing of things. Are there deadlines for taking the examination? Are there deadlines for completing the federal training, or the first two?
Well, you really should be having your exam, your federal training done before you take the exam. Because once that exam is done, then you're pretty much, and you pass, then you're ready to be helpful to your organization. So if you want to be helping in this open enrollment, you need to be moving faster so that you have everything in place. Nothing is overly onerous, and the scheduling should be fairly easy for getting an exam. And if there's any issues, please call our agent licensing office and say you're having difficulty getting in. But I would get your federal training done. It will be very helpful. And then study chapters 1 through 4 of the intermediary guide and look through the Navigator and CAC FAQs to prepare for your test.
Yeah, and I think the main takeaway for the questions that are coming in is you need to complete these steps before you can help anyone. That's the main thing. The federal training will be available. The one for this year expires. It expires in September, but the one for this coming year is open now, and you need to complete it and do your exam before you can actually sit down with a consumer. That's for CACs and Navigators. And then do you guys know, do you need your CAC ID to complete the federal training?
I do not know that. I think you do. I think you have to have registered, because I think when you're completing that process, you need to put that information in. But I have not done that federal training since 2014, so I'm not currently aware of that. I'm not sure if any of the other panelists are. Allison,
I was going to say, we as a Navigator organization, we have to have Navigator IDs for it. I want to say you might not need your CAC ID, but if you are working with the CAC CDO registered organization, there's no reason for you not to have that. So you should have it regardless. And then if you're setting up your CMS account and it asks for it, then you have it. So I would just make sure you have that beforehand, just in case. And then did you happen to know the amount of time somebody has to complete the exam?
I think the windows is actually pretty generous. There are only, I believe, 35 questions, but I think the slots are in either 1 or 2 hour increments. Again, I haven't taken the test, so I'm not sure what the timing slots are, but when you call for scheduling, they'll let you know what the time is. And if for some reason you don't pass on the first time, you can retake that exam.
Yep, that's definitely a takeaway. People have failed to pass and you just retake it. It's okay. So no pressure on that. And if you are somebody, I believe, with any tests like this, if you have test anxiety or anything like that, you can work with your testing center to get additional time or space or whatever you need.
And especially with COVID right now, a lot of this is being remotely proctored.
Yeah, exactly. So there may be some additional time considerations related to that. I have yet to see the new one. And then do you have to pay again if you failed the test? I believe you do. You have to pay for a new examination to be set up for you.
Correct.
All right, that is all I have for questions. We are at right around 10, so that's perfect. And we will take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:10. And I think we'll be just about 5 minutes ahead in that case, so that'll be good. All right, go get your coffee, everybody. Relax, reorient yourselves, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.